Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back to the Weigh In Podcast. We continue our Meet the Fighter series, this time with the welterweight division that is 170 pounds in the UFC. Very fun division and absolutely stacked at the top. This division is going to have such a fun 2026 with a lot of fresh matchups. And without further ado, let's get into it, kicking things off with the 15th ranked contender in the welterweight division, and that is the veteran Daniel Rodriguez. D-Rod is 20-5 in his MMA career with notable wins over Kevin Holland, Santiago Ponzinibbio, Alex Morono, Li Jingliang, and Kevin Lee and Mike Perry. My apologies, almost left off Platinum. He is the former Smash Global Welterweight Champion outside the UFC. Has good boxing and a decent ground game, but definitely prefers to keep fights on the feet. He loves a good scrap. D-Rod started off his UFC career pretty good. Did have a little bit of a three-fight skid in the middle. But coming off that, he has since won 3 in a row. That is his current streak. His last win coming over Kevin Holland, a very impressive win. Something that's kind of been the bane for D-Rod inside the UFC. He has had 8 canceled fights in his UFC career. Majority of those were due to his opponent, not because of him, but just a little bit unlucky. And at this point, with him being already 39 years old, I don't necessarily think he's going to be seeing the title picture. Especially once you're pushing 40. I mean, it doesn't seem very likely you're going to win a UFC title, especially at a lower weight class, but still a very scrappy guy, very fun, doesn't put on boring fights. He's very entertaining to watch, a good guy to have in the sport. And I'm always happy when I see D-Rod on the card. He's definitely a very, you know, uh, concrete guy in terms of you know what you're going to get from him. So D-Rod, a very consistent fighter once he gets inside that octagon. Coming in at number 14, we have a former title challenger and a guy that has been at the top of this division for years, has fallen off in the past couple years, though, and that is Colby Covington. Covington's one of the most controversial figures in the UFC, but definitely an elite fighter during his prime. He is 17-5 in his MMA career, with a good notable wins list over Jorge Masvidal, Tyron Woodley, Robbie Lawler, Rafael Dos Anjos, and Damian Maia. He is the former UFC interim welterweight champion. He won that title against RDA back in 2018. A little bit controversial as well. That was back when Tyron Woodley was the champion. So the story goes, Colby won the title at UFC 225, and Tyron was to defend at UFC 228, or they wanted it to be at UFC 228 when Woodley would defend against Covington after winning the interim title. But Colby actually needed to have surgery on his nose. I think it was a deviated septum or something like that. Whatever it is. I'm not a medical professional, so I probably shouldn't start quoting medical terms. But either way, Colby wanted to have surgery on his nose to just kind of unclog a blockage. And so the UFC stripped Covington of his interim title and gave the shot to Darren Till instead. Colby would end up having to fight Robbie Lawler the next year and would finally get his title shot in the winter of 2019 against Kamaru Usman. That was the first of his 3 title shots inside the UFC. Twice they were against Kamaru Usman, lost them both, and then once against Leon Edwards, which he also did come up short in. But in his prime, Colby had a phenomenal gas tank with a very high output. The pace he put on Robbie Lawler was just insane, and the pace at which both the Usman fights were fought at were incredible. Very good wrestling as well. Wrestled in college, I believe at a D3, maybe D2, one of the two, I don't remember. But did wrestle in college. He did have a 7-fight win streak leading up to that title challenge against Kamaru Usman. Unfortunately, has been 2-4 since, and just hasn't really had a lot of activity. We haven't really seen him in the cage much. We'll see if he even makes it back at all. I'm starting to question whether we'll see Colby ever again if he's not inside the title picture. He doesn't just seem like the kind of guy that's just going to go out there and fight for the heck of it. At least not to me. But either way, Colby Covington been at the top of this division for years and is still a stable guy inside the rankings at number 14. Coming in at number 13, another guy that's been at the top of this division for a while. He had a lot of potential when he was coming up, but sickness and injuries really just derailed everything, and that is Jeff Neal. Neal is 16-7 in his MMA career with notable wins over Rafael Dos Anjos, Vicente Luque, Santiago Ponzinibbio, Mike Perry, and the former champion Bilal Muhammad back in the day. 63% of his wins do come by KO and TKO. He has very heavy hands, thus explaining his nickname Hands of Steel. And as I mentioned, he did have a lot of potential. He began his UFC career 5-0 and then had to miss the next year. I think that's when he got sick. I don't remember exactly when, but he would come back and lose his next two. Would win two after that, but then would go on to lose three of his next four. So he's 3-5 total in his last 8 fights. And like I said, the sickness and injuries really just built up for Jeff Neal. A lot of circumstances kind of outside of his control that kind of derailed things, but was a very promising prospect, especially with that win over Bilal Muhammad all the way back in 2019. And I believe he was the last guy to beat Muhammad before Bilal went on his championship run. But Jeff Neal had all the potential in the world, just wasn't able to see it come to fruition. But still a very dangerous guy, still has good KO power, and hopefully we'll see him back in 2026. Coming in at number 12, another guy kind of on his way out, but has seen some very good high moments during his glory days in the welterweight division, and that is the former title challenger Gilbert Burns. Dorino's 22-9 in his MMA career with notable wins over Jorge Masvidal, Neil Magny, Stephen Thompson, Tyron Woodley, Damian Maia, and Gunnar Nelson. Gilbert is a very high-level grappler. He competed in numerous grappling events outside the UFC. To my knowledge, he still does, but I'm not 100% sure. But I know back in the day he was regularly competing in gi and no gi grappling competitions outside the UFC. He did make it all the way to a title shot against Kamaru Usman in the COVID-riddled 2020. It actually at the first Fight Island card was when Gilbert was supposed to get his initial title shot. However, Dorino did contract COVID-19 and was withdrawn from the bout, which enabled Jorge Masvidal to step in. But Gilbert would eventually get his shot and lose to his former training partner and never saw a title fight again. But still a very dangerous guy, always has been throughout his entire career. 5 performance bonuses in his UFC career as well, which is very impressive. And unfortunately for Gilbert, he is on a 4-fight losing streak. After losing to Usman, he did come back with some good wins, but 4 in a row to the best in this division: Bilal Muhammad, Jack Della Maddalena, Sean Brady, and Michael Morales. So none of those names are names to scoff at, but that loss to Michael Morales was particularly brutal, a first-round beatdown at the hands of a young up-and-comer. So personally, I'd like to see Gilbert against one of these lower ranked guys that we just mentioned, guys that are kind of on their way out but have been at the top of this division for a while. Um, I think that's the type of opponent that Gilbert Burns needs right now to maybe even have potential to get back on track. He is 39, so I'm not saying he's really going to work his way back into the title picture, but at least give him a winnable fight. Give some of these, guys on their way out some winnable fights, some guys around their age, and at the same point in their career, I think that'd be good for all of these guys right now, especially Dorino. Now, coming in at number 11, we have a little bit of a shift. The first few guys have all kind of been guys that are on their way out and have been at the top of this division for a while. But now we've got one that is lower ranked for now, but is working his way up, and that is the Brazilian Gabriel Bonfim. Bonfim is 19-1 in his young MMA career with notable wins over Randy Brown, Stephen Thompson, and Chaos Williams. He was the former LFA welterweight champion outside the UFC and actually began his MMA career 15-0. He would lose his third UFC bout to Nicholas Dalby, a fight of the night, and has since won 4 in a row, his latest a very impressive win over Randy Brown. He's won 3 UFC performance bonuses as well in just 7 fights, so a very exciting fighter to watch. And he does have very good grappling as well. 68% of his wins, that is 13 of his 19 wins, coming by way of submission. However, his striking is definitely making some good strides as well. So Gabriel Bonfim, one of the many that have worked their way up in this division and just seem to have such a promising future. Can't wait to see what's next for him in the new year. Now we cracked the top 10, and a guy that's gotten some high-level experience did lose to some of those higher-level guys, but still young and still has more than enough time to make his way back up the division, and that is Numansa Joaquin Buckley. Buckley's 21-7 in his MMA career with notable wins over Colby Covington, Stephen Thompson, Nursultan Ruzaboyev, Vicente Luque, and Impa Kasanganay. He did have a 6-fight win streak before his loss in his last fight, a main event against Kamaru Usman in Atlanta, my hometown. 6 UFC performance bonuses in his 16-fight UFC run as well, so a very exciting fighter. 71% of his wins come by knockout or TKO. He has never won a fight by submission, but that power has certainly come in handy. Scored him the 2020 knockout of the year against Impa Kasanganay, one of the craziest knockouts you will ever see. He threw a left high kick, which Kasanganay caught, and then Buckley spun in midair, and it was a spinning back kick to the face of Impa Kasanganay that knocked him out cold. One of the craziest knockouts, and it was on Fight Island as well, so it was during the pandemic, no crowd, just a crazy knockout. And if you've never seen that fight, go do yourself a favor and check that knockout out. That was crazy, but Buckley just constantly shows why he's one of the most powerful and dangerous in the division. That fight is a great example of why. As I mentioned, does come up short against some of the better guys. He got that shot against Kamaru Usman in the main event, did come up short, but only 31, has plenty of time to rebuild himself. And with that power, he's always one strike away from finishing any fight that he's in. So definitely a dangerous guy. I think he might be in for another big time opponent in 2026. Coming in at number 9, we have another guy that's kind of on their way down in the division, but certainly saw the highest of the sport, and that is the former champion Leon Edwards. Edwards is 22-6 in his MMA career with notable wins over Colby Covington, twice over Kamaru Usman, Nate Diaz, Rafael dos Anjos, Gunnar Nelson, Donald Cerrone, and Vicente Luque. Did hold UFC gold at welterweight. He defended that belt twice in a rematch against Kamaru Usman and, well, technically a trilogy against Kamaru Usman, I should say, and against Colby Covington as well. Also held the BAMMA welterweight title outside the UFC and defended that belt once as well. He has very high-level technical striking. He is very clean to watch. He's not the type of guy that's necessarily going to go berserk and just go all in for a KO at any given second. Now, he can get one when he needs one, but he prefers to keep things technical. If it looks clean, that's kind of Leon Edwards' strength and comfort zone. He did have a 12-fight win streak as well before losing his title to Bilal Muhammad, but went on an incredible run inside the welterweight division, including his title win, which won Knockout of the Year in 2022. And just to set the scene, it was a crazy story. Leon had fought Kamaru Usman way back, I believe it was 2015 was their first matchup, and then rematched in 2022 for the title when Kamaru Usman was champ. There were about 55 seconds to go, maybe 53, 52, somewhere around that number. Kamaru Usman was making the sixth defense of his welterweight title, and if he won this fight, he would have tied Anderson Silva for the longest win streak in UFC history. Usman was way ahead. He was up 3-1 and winning the fifth round, and Leon Edwards caught him with a head kick out of absolutely nowhere. Finished Kamaru Usman. Welterweight title changed hands. Leon will win a rematch and earn another defense as well. Just a seismic shift in the welterweight division from one kick off the foot of Leon Edwards. Just incredible moment. I was in the arena for that knockout, actually. One of the craziest things I've ever seen in person or just in general in this sport. Unfortunately for Leon, following that impressive title run, he is on a 3-fight losing streak. He got dominated by Sean Brady 2 fights ago in a main event and got clean KO'd by Carlos Prates in his last fight. So unfortunately, just doesn't seem like Leon quite has it the same way he used to. I don't know if he'll ever really be able to regain that form that he had at the top, but still an exciting guy, still a former champion, and a guy that deserves so much respect for what he's done. Created some incredible moments in his time at the top. Coming in at number 8, we have an all-time great in this division and the one that Leon actually dethroned to win the welterweight title, and that is another former champion. It is the Nigerian Nightmare, Kamaru Usman. The legendary Usman is 21-4 in his MMA career with an incredibly deep, notable wins list over Joaquin Buckley, Colby Covington twice, Jorge Masvidal twice, Gilbert Burns, Tyron Woodley, Rafael dos Anjos, Damian Maia, Sean Strickland, and Leon Edwards. Way back in their first matchup in 2015. As I mentioned, he is the former UFC welterweight champion, defended that belt 5 times. I believe that ties Matt Hughes for second longest title reign all time in welterweight history, only trailing George St. Pierre. He won the Ultimate Fighter Season 21 as well, won that all the way back in 2015 in the summer. He had a 15-fight UFC win streak as well before his loss to Leon Edwards. And that not only would have been a 15-fight win streak, or 16 fight win streak if he had won, which would have tied the record for the longest win streak. But that was to start his UFC career as well. Won the first 15 fights in his UFC career before that shock KO loss to Leon Edwards. And overall in his MMA career, it was a 19 fight win streak, which makes it seem even more impressive. Unfortunately, he would go on to lose 3 in a row, twice to Leon Edwards and once to Khamzat Chimaev after that win streak ended, but did get back on the horse in his last fight in a dominant main event victory and a performance of the night over Joaquin Buckley. So it does seem like Usman is back on the horse. He's trying to clamor for a title shot. I don't quite know if I would say he's the most deserving in the world, but his resume definitely speaks for itself. And some people do want to see him get the title shot, but we'll see. Personally, I think he needs another win, but Usman still, even at this age, he is already 38 years old, but still has his dominant wrestling intact, and his striking is ever improving. That shift to Trevor Whitman's camp just completely changed the way that he strikes and really took him to that next level. So Kamaru Usman, even at 38 years old and 1-4 in his, or 1-3, pardon, in his last 4, still very dangerous, still a player in this welterweight division. Now we shift to the number 7 ranked contender. And pretty much every guy from here on up is really within that title picture and a very, very dangerous threat to the 170-pound crown. And we kicked that list off with the Philadelphia native, Sean Brady. Brady's 18-2 in his MMA career with notable wins over Leon Edwards, Gilbert Burns, Kelvin Gastelum, and Michael Chiesa. He was the former Cage Fury UFC welterweight champion outside the UFC and defended that belt twice, and actually began his MMA career on a 15-fight win streak before running into Bilal Muhammad back in 2022. He is very dominant wrestling, and that was on display in his latest win against Leon Edwards, one of the most dominant wins you will see, and regularly competes in grappling competitions outside the UFC as well. He has only lost twice in his career, and both losses were by KO TKO, so you're not really going to see him get outlasted over a 25-minute fight or even a 15-minute fight. Not really going to see him get dominated on the ground either, but his striking does kind of seem to be his weakness. He does have 3 performance bonuses in his UFC career, so some of the more dominant showings that he's put on when he does win. But like I said, he's just struggled to kind of keep up with some of the more elite strikers in this division when they're on their game. I mean, getting TKO'd by Bilal Muhammad is definitely interesting, and Michael Morales, no shame in that one, but he just kind of seems like he's a little outmatched on the feet when he needs to. I just don't quite know if he has that striking technique or power that he really needs to truly become one of the best in this division. 32 years old as well, so he is, you know, kind of coming into his prime. So if there's a time for him to be winning, it's now. So definitely would like to see Sean Brady improve his striking a little bit. I'm sure he's working on it day by day, but still a very dominant wrestler and can compete with the best of the best on the ground on any given night. Now we move to the number 6 contender in this division, a fan favorite and one of the hottest contenders in this division at present, and that is the streaking Carlos Prates. Prates is 23-7 in his MMA career, already a lot of experience for the 32-year-old. Notable wins over Leon Edwards, Jeff Neal, Neil Magny, and Li Jingliang. He has elite KO power, 78% of his wins. That is 18 of his 23 wins coming by way of KO TKO. He's had 7 UFC fights, 6 wins, 1 loss, and all 6 wins have come by knockout or technical knockout. He did have an overall 11-fight win streak before a main event loss to Ian Machado Gary, but has since bounced back with a nasty spinning back elbow against Jeff Neal, and then the crazy straight left knockout of Leon Edwards that put him out cold. And all 6 of his wins have earned him performance bonuses as well, so it just goes to show how violent his knockouts truly are. Now, there is a rumor that he's going to be fighting Jack Della Maddalena on April 11th. That seems to be what the UFC is working on. However, this fight is not official yet. It has not been signed on both sides. It seems like both fighters are down. Prates is down, and Della Maddalena is down. It's just a matter of getting them to sign the contract and the UFC officially announcing the fight. So there is a rumor that that fight is circulating. There's a rumor that that's what the UFC wants next. We'll see if that fight ends up coming to fruition. But as of now, just a rumor. And the only action even rumored to be on the books for the welterweight division in the first quarter, or I guess that'd be second quarter of 2026, but still. The welterweight division, at least the top 15, does not have a single fight on the books at present. So definitely want to get this division busy in 2026. Prates seems like he might be the one to kick things off. Now we get to the best of the best in this division, the top five, and kicking things off in that top five is a former champion, and that is Bilal Muhammad. Muhammad is 24-5 in his MMA career with notable wins over Leon Edwards, Gilbert Burns, Sean Brady, Vicente Luque, Stephen Thompson, and Damian Maia. He was not able to defend the welterweight title during his reign, but still thoroughly defeated Leon Edwards to capture the title and etch his name in the history books. And he also held the Titan FC welterweight title outside the UFC. He did have an 11-fight unbeaten streak before his loss of his title to Jack Della Maddalena, and I say unbeaten instead of a win streak because he did have that no contest against Leon Edwards back in 2021 where Bilal was actually poked in the eye. It was a pretty bad poke too, but that fight was stopped and ruled a no contest as soon as the eye poke happened. So technically, if you go by the record, that means his win streak quote was broken, but he was still unbeaten through 11 fights before running into JDM. Very high level wrestling, and of course, that was on display in his title win over Leon Edwards. Just was in complete control of that fight. And 75% of his wins by decision as well. Not exactly known as the greatest finisher, but lately in his title loss to Jack Della Maddalena and his most recent fight against Ian Machado Gary, he has been striking a lot more. And I respect Bilal a lot for that. I mean, a lot of guys would, just kind of stick to their game plan, but Bilal trying to get more exciting. And he's really had two very exciting fights in his last couple fights. And a lot of people used to give him crap for that, saying he's boring and he doesn't knock people out and all this stuff. But his last couple fights have really been very entertaining, especially his title loss to Jack Della Maddalena. That was a very fun fight and a grueling battle. So I would definitely recommend that fight to people. And for newcomers seeing the memes that Bilal's boring, maybe it sounds crazy to recommend a Bilal Muhammad fight to a new fan, but you know what? The Sean Brady knockout was pretty impressive, or TKO, I should say. And that fight against Jack Della Maddalena for the title was very, very fun to watch. So Bilal Muhammad, definitely an underrated guy and gets a lot of hate that I feel is unjust, but still a top five guy in this division and still trying to prove the haters wrong. Coming in at number 4, we have a guy that is knocking on the door of a title shot, one of the best young contenders in the entire sport right now, and one of the hottest up-and-comers that we have, and that is the Ecuadorian Michael Morales. Morales is unbeaten in his MMA career at 19-0 with notable wins over Sean Brady, Gilbert Burns, Neil Magny, and Jake Matthews. He held the Extreme MMA welterweight title outside the UFC as well as the Oro FC welterweight title. And just incredible finishing instinct. 14 of his 19 wins, that's 74%, coming by way of KO TKO. He does have one submission on his record as well. Has earned 3 UFC performance bonuses and just 7 UFC fights. And those have come all in his last 3, which have all been first round knockouts over Neil Magny, Gilbert Burns, and Sean Brady. Michael Morales, at just 26-year-old, absolutely seems to have that championship potential that fans want to see. He is absolutely massive for the welterweight division as well. You just look at his frame when he gets in there against some of these guys. He looks like he was at least a weight class above Sean Brady when he got in there. And he really is just so strong for this division. His finishing instincts have really started to come around. And I think he's a very legitimate threat to the title. I don't know who's going to get the next title shot. It's kind of up in the air at the moment, but Michael Morales definitely could get the shot, and I don't think a lot of people would complain. So Morales is going to be a very important player in this division in 2026. Can't wait to see what's next for him. But coming in at number 3 is another guy that is kind of knocking on the door for a title shot, and another one that seems incredibly deserving. Really, 4, 3, and 2 could all get the next title shot. Even Prates at 6 could get the next title shot, and I don't think people would complain. But the number 3 contender is the Irishman, Ian Machado Gary. Gary's 17-1 in his MMA career with notable wins over Bilal Muhammad, Carlos Prates, Michael Venom Page, Jeff Neal, Neil Magny, and D-Rod Daniel Rodriguez. He is, of course, the former Cage Warriors welterweight champion and vacated that title to come to the UFC. Multiple-time amateur champion as well. and his amateur career spans 7 fights. He won 6 of them. Very high level striking with drastically improved grappling. Gary does a very good job at keeping the fight at distance. He's a very safe guy in there. He got a lot more finishes early on in his career. Hasn't really gotten as many as of late, but very technical and very clean when he gets in there. And he did begin his MMA career 15-0 because of that style. His only loss coming against Shavkat Rakhmonov, of course, no shame in that. And that was a short notice bout, as a matter of fact. We'll explain that in a little bit. But your only loss in your entire career being a short notice fight against Shavkat. And Ian Gary went the distance with Rakhmonov and at least won a round or two. So made it competitive against the guy that many view as the divisional boogeyman. So Ian Machado Gary has stayed active since then, winning 2 over Carlos Prates and Bilal Muhammad. Very impressive wins, and he's another guy that fans would love to see fight for the title. I would not be upset if he got it. He's right there. So Ian Machado Gary going to be a big time player in the next 12 months as well. And now we get to that divisional boogeyman coming in at number 2. This guy has been viewed as the scariest guy in this division for a long time, probably for the past couple years. Unfortunately, did miss 2025 due to injury, but I can't wait to see him back in 2026, and that is Kazakhstan's Shavkat Rakhmonov. Shavkat is undefeated in his MMA career, 19-0, with notable wins over Ian Machado Gary, Stephen Thompson, Jeff Neal, and Neil Magny. Outside the UFC, he was the M1 Global and Kazakhstan MMA Federation welterweight champion, defended each belt 1 time. Has absolutely elite finishing ability. He has finished 18 of his 19 wins. The only fighter to make it the distance with him is Ian Machado Gary. That is it. Every single other fight in Shavkat's entire career has been either a submission or a knockout. 10 of them by submission, 8 of them by KO TKO. Incredibly well-rounded as well. And his rear naked choke, he had a standing rear naked choke against Jeff Neal. I mean, his finishing instincts are just incredible. He is so strong and so dominant in his fights. He could really win the fight anywhere. He could take it to the ground and win. That seems to be his bread and butter, but can also win fights on the feet. And Shavkat actually was scheduled to fight for the welterweight title after beating Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in 2024. He beat Wonderboy in 2023. He was scheduled to fight for the title in 2024. Unfortunately, the champion Bilal Muhammad was forced to withdraw with an injury, and Shavkat would end up fighting Ian Gary on that card, or Ian Machado Gary on that card, on short notice. Did get the win. As I mentioned, got hurt and did have to miss 2025. And based off the rest of the activity of the welterweight division, it does seem like he might need to come back and get another win before he gets a shot at the title. But at least personally, and I don't think too many people would disagree, I still think that Shavkat is the most dangerous contender in this division right now. I think he would be the best matchup for the current champion. So hopefully he can come back in the middle of 2026, get a win, and then fight for the title by the end of the year. I would love to see it. Now, coming in at number 1, we have the most recent former champion, and that is, of course, the Aussie Jack Della Maddalena. JDM is 18-3 in his MMA career with notable wins over Bilal Muhammad, Gilbert Burns, Kevin Holland, and Randy Brown. He is the former UFC welterweight champion, lost his title in November, and also held the eternal MMA welterweight champion outside the UFC. Defended that belt 5 times as well. Incredibly impressive. In just 9 UFC fights, he does have 6 performance bonuses, and a lot of that is due to his elite boxing, has incredible striking, puts on very fun fights, and it also shows in his finishing rate. 67% of his wins coming by way of KO TKO. Does have 2 submission wins on his record as well. JDM actually began his MMA career, at least professionally, 0-2, and then would go on to win 18 fights in a row. He's talked about it in interviews, how him and his coaches just changed his mindset. When he was 0-2, he was thinking about giving up, just thinking about retiring and going and doing something else. And his coach said, hey, let's just get to 1-2, right? Won that fight. Let's get to 2-2. Did that. And I believe once he won 2 in a row, his coach said, let's get to 10 wins. And JDM just kept winning. Eventually ended up winning the UFC welterweight title. Like I said, did lose it in his last fight, but As I mentioned with Carlos Prates, he is rumored to be fighting on April 11th. Again, disclaimer, that fight is not official yet. That fight is not officially on the books. It has not officially been signed at the time of this recording. I hope that fight goes through because that would be a striker's delight. JDM and Carlos Prates would be an incredible striking war. Personally, I kind of hope that fight's 5 rounds. I don't know if it will be, but well, again, I don't even know what's going to happen. We don't know yet, but I definitely hope that fight happens. I think that would be such a fun fight for this division and could be the first ranked welterweight battle we see in 2026. So hopefully that fight gets done and gets announced soon. I would love to see JDM get back in there. But that does take us to the current champion. And this champion is a little bit unique in the sense that, kind of like Ilya Topuria at lightweight, he only has one fight. Well, Topuria had a couple lightweight fights inside the UFC, but this champion only has one fight in this division. That is the former lightweight champion that came up to welterweight to win a second title and took it with ease. That is the Dagestani Islam Makhachev. Islam is 28-1 in his MMA career with notable wins over Jack Della Maddalena, Renato Moicano, Dustin Poirier, Alexander Volkanovski twice, Charles Oliveira, Bobby Green, Dan Hooker, and Arman Sarukian way back in Arman's UFC debut. As I mentioned in his last fight, Islam did capture the welterweight title. That is his second divisional championship. Held the lightweight title before that and defended that belt 4 times. Never lost that title, but vacated to move up to take the welterweight strap. And that is why he is currently listed as the pound-for-pound #1 MMA fighter in the world. No other fighter in the entire sport is at the level of winning and dominance that Islam is at present. He began his MMA career an undefeated 12-0 before running into Adriano Martins all the way back in 2015. And kind of crazy because that's Islam's only loss. He just got caught. It's not like he was getting dominated or anything, but it happens in the sport. You know, sometimes guys just have a momentary lapse, and that split second can cause you to lose consciousness. So Islam loses this fight to Adriano Martins all the way back in 2015, right? Islam goes on a 16-fight win streak following that result, and Adriano Martins would end up losing his next 6 fights after that. Finally got back in the win column all the way in 2024, but think about that. That fight happened in 2015. Islam never lost again his next 16 fights, and Adriano Martins didn't win another fight for 9 years. How crazy is this sport, right? But just goes to show that one punch is the only slip up in Islam's entire career. That 16-fight win streak, by the way, is tied for the longest win streak in the history of the UFC, tied with Anderson Silva. Whoever ends up challenging Islam next for the welterweight title, if Islam wins that fight, that would make him the first fighter in the entire history of the UFC to win 17 in a row inside the organization. His 4 lightweight title defenses are also a lightweight record, surpassing BJ Penn and Khabib Nurmagomedov's mark. Khabib, of course, is Islam's mentor, coach, and best friend growing up in school. And just another one of those guys that comes from the Dagestani camp established by Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov way back in the day. And that was the succession plan. So it really is a cool story. And I'll probably do another episode just kind of talking about this just in a general podcast form. But just to kind of summarize, Khabib's father's dream was for Khabib to go 30-0 and retire, and then Islam to come in and take the reins from there. And that basically was pretty close to what ended up happening. Of course, with Abdulmanap's untimely passing, Khabib did retire one fight early at 29-0, but Islam did come in and take up the crown. And in my opinion, he has surpassed Khabib's legacy to this point. I mean, 4 lightweight title defenses. I think Khabib's defenses were stronger. The level of competition at lightweight was stronger. But Islam going up to welterweight and taking that title too cemented him. I think Islam is already one of the top 10 greatest of all time in the entire sport's history. And he is only 34 years old as well, so he does still have a few good years left in him. And if he breaks that win streak record, Islam's going to be right there in terms of some of the greatest fighters to ever compete in the history of this sport. If he wins that, it's Tough to say whether he surpasses Anderson Silva's legacy because Silva did defend his title 10 times in that time frame, but just with Islam going up to welterweight, and especially with the level of contenders that welterweight has, if Islam can turn away even two or three of these guys, you might be talking about him in the same conversation as John Jones and George St. Pierre. As great as he is, I don't think he's quite at that level just yet where he's in that top three, but he's absolutely one of the best to ever do it. The best of this era by far. I really don't think there's another comparison. I mean, Alex Pineda maybe, but Pineda did lose a couple fights in that span, like the Adesanya loss, the Ankalaev loss. So I think Islam is head and shoulders the best of this era, at least of the early to mid 2020s era. I think Islam is definitely the best one there. So still a lot of legacy left to be built for Islam Makhachev, but he is the current king at 170 pounds, and I can't wait to see how long he reigns over this division as well. So 170 pounds, one of the most stacked in the sport right now, and definitely incredibly strong at the top. A lot of young and hungry contenders, a lot of fresh matchups, and a very exciting division. They just got to get it moving. We got to get some fights booked for this division in 2026. But middleweight will be coming up next, 185 pounds. Cannot wait to bring that division to you guys as well. Another division with a lot of guys on their way down, but a lot of guys on their way up as well, clashing in the middle. A lot of fresh matchups. Can't wait to bring the 185 pounders to you next. I'll see you then. Peace.